What's up, fellas? Now, this time I was going to say this is going to be my last video for the month of May 2021. But if you remember, last month I did that. And not only did I end up doing one more video after that, I ended up doing two more videos after that. Yeah, just last month I did a video where I said this is going to be my last video for the month of April of 2021. And then, I think 2 days later, I did another video. And then a day or two later, I did another video. So right now, I'm going to say this is probably, keyword probably, is May, the month of May ends on Monday. Yeah, I'd say this is probably going to be my last YouTube video for the month of May of 2021. I want to cover a couple things in this video. One, I want to talk about in relation to a commenter of mine posted this comment. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but he made a good point. He said that, Alan, you did a video where you said that Mode 1 prevents women from exploiting you, manipulating you, and generally running game on you. But what you failed to point out is that one of the reasons why a lot of guys hate Mode 1 and actually prefer Mode 2 or even Mode 3 is because they want to run game on women. They're not so much concerned about preventing women from running game on them, because they're more concerned about running game on women, which is true, which is very, very true. That's a valid point. I'm going to talk about that. The other thing I'm going to talk about in this video is, it's not so much related to dating and relationships. Sometimes I go off the subject of dating and relationships, but I'll probably talk about this first. Now, in the last couple of weeks, now you remember I did a video about my fraternity brother, Kevin Samuels. And I applauded his strategic business sense when it came to growing his channel. He's grown his channel big time over the last, I want to say 15 months. 12 to 15, yeah, I'd say over the last 12 to 15 months, I would arguably say I don't know if any black male YouTube content creator has grown their channel to the degree that Kevin Samuels has. And another person who's on the verge of growing their channel big time is the former NBA player, Kwame Brown. Kwame Brown. Now, there's been a lot of chatter about both, but one particular thing that caught my ear was I heard on one excerpt from somebody's live stream, somebody said first about Kevin Samuels, they say, man, I think Kevin Samuels is going to make the black manosphere go mainstream. I think Kevin Samuels is on the verge of being a mainstream media superstar. And on another different live stream, somebody said something similar about the former NBA player, Kwame Brown. I heard somebody say something to the effect of, man, Kwame needs his own show. And if Kwame was to get on, have his own cable TV show, man, it would be more popular than a lot of other sports-related shows on cable TV. Now, man, in case you don't know about my history, man, before I became a full-time book author and dating coach, when I lived in Los Angeles for 6.5 years. That's the industry I worked in when I lived in Los Angeles, was media and entertainment. Whether it was a permanent job or a long-term temp assignment, I used to work at TV studios, movie studios, other media and entertainment-related companies and corporations. I'm here to tell you, man, Y'all don't know what the fuck y'all talking about. And I say that with all due respect to both Kevin and Brother Kwame. So this is not me disparaging them individually per se, but as far as people projecting that both can become mainstream media superstars, they don't know what they're talking about. See, if you remember, I did at least minimum 2 videos about this since I've been on YouTube. There's been at least minimum 2, maybe even 3 or 4, but I know minimum, I've done at least 2 videos where I talked about the difference between mainstream media popularity and fame and social media / YouTube popularity and fame. Those are 2 different animals, man. That would be my starting point. Those are apples and oranges. Those are apples and oranges, man. In other words, what it takes to be a YouTube sensation or YouTube superstar is totally different than the criteria that's needed to be a mainstream media sensation and superstar. I'm going to try not to be too lengthy for the sake of time, but I'm going to cover at least a handful of things. Number one, man, like I remember one video I did that was related to this, had to do with me versus Alpha Male Strategies. Because I had a couple of his followers come in my comment section and say something to the fact that, Alan, I think you're jealous that AMS is more popular than you and more famous than you. And I responded to this hater and critic. I said, in what context? You talking about YouTube or you talking about mainstream media popularity? Now, YouTube, I give it to him. He is. There's a lot of people who are more popular than me, have more what I would call social media / YouTube notoriety than me. You can measure that simply by how many YouTube subscribers they have, how many Patreon subscribers they have. So that's 2 simple ways where you can measure how many views they have on their videos. Yeah, I would say that's top 3 ways you can measure somebody's level of what I would call YouTube fame. Is by the number of YouTube subscribers that person has, the average number of views they have per video, and to a lesser extent, their number of Patreon subscribers if they have a Patreon page. Those are 3 main ways you can measure somebody's degree of YouTube fame. But what I basically said to this person, I said, if you're talking about, I said, when it comes to mainstream media notoriety, I would crush AMS. AMS ain't nowhere near on my level. When it comes to mainstream media notoriety, AMS ain't nowhere near on my level. As I would say, actually, the vast majority of black male YouTube content creators are not on my level when it comes to mainstream media notoriety. How do you measure that? Here's a general way you can measure how much mainstream media notoriety that someone has. How many times has their name been mentioned in a well-known newspaper? How many times has their name been mentioned in a well-known magazine? How many times have they been interviewed on a nationally syndicated broadcast radio show? And how many times have they been interviewed or mentioned on a local, regional, or national television talk show? If you haven't either been interviewed by a newspaper, magazine, nationally broadcast radio show, or a television talk show, or at minimum you haven't had your name mentioned by one of those 4 things, that means you don't have any mainstream media notoriety. That means you don't have any mainstream media notoriety. I'll tell you another simple way you can see if somebody has a certain degree of mainstream media notoriety is if they have a Wikipedia page. If you don't have a Wikipedia page or have never had a Wikipedia page, that means you haven't grabbed the attention of mainstream media yet. If you've never had a Wikipedia page, that means if you either one or two things, either A, don't currently have one, or at minimum, you've never used to have one, The mainstream media either doesn't know who the fuck you are, or they know who you are, but they don't like you or don't care about you. That's a simple way you can tell if you have any degree of mainstream media notoriety. Is if I had to just identify one site and one site only, would be Wikipedia. If you ain't like me, I'm not on Wikipedia now because honestly, a group of editors voted to delete my page. But so I can't brag that I have a Wikipedia page now, but I did. I actually had 2 Wikipedia pages. I had a Wikipedia page for my book. It wasn't so much for me. It was for my book, Mode 1, between 2007 and 2009. And that ended up having some editors deleted. Then between 2014 and roughly a year ago, I think last summer, for about 6 years, I had one for me. I was one of the few black male YouTube content creators that had a Wikipedia page. But anyway, that's the number one way you measure someone's mainstream media notoriety. Again, it's by how many times they've been interviewed and or mentioned in a newspaper, a magazine, nationally broadcast syndicated radio, or some type of television talk show. So let's I don't want to redo the me versus AMS, but as I pointed out in that video I did, I think it was either early this year or late last year, I ain't never seen AMS interviewed or mentioned in no major newspaper. I ain't seen him interviewed or mentioned in no major magazine. I ain't never seen him interviewed on no nationally broadcast syndicated radio show. And I ain't never seen him on no local, regional, or national television talk show. I've covered all 4 of those bases. My name has been mentioned in the Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, as well as a couple other newspapers. I've been in at least 2 or 3 magazines, Essence Magazine, Black Enterprise Magazine. I've been on at least a half a dozen nationally syndicated broadcast radio shows. And I've been on national television at least 2 or 3 times. So, bottom line, at the risk of tooting my own horn, ain't too many black male YouTube content creators that could fuck with me when it comes to mainstream notoriety. YouTube, yes. Again, there's a few people who exceed me in terms of, again, YouTube subscribers, average views per video, and number of Patreon subscribers. There's a number of black male YouTube content creators who exceed me when it comes to YouTube fame. But when it comes to mainstream media notoriety, name somebody who can fuck with me. Again, with all due respect to Kevin Samuels can't even fuck with me in that area. Kevin Samuels don't have no mainstream media notoriety. How many times have you seen Kevin Samuels being interviewed in a well-known newspaper like the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Los Angeles Times or the Chicago Tribune or something similar? I ain't seen his name in no national newspaper. Magazines. Well, he did get mentioned by the Griot. The Griot is mainstream. They mention him, but they mention him in a negative light, though. But they did mention him. The Griot. If you're not familiar with the Griot falls under, I think, the NBC umbrella. Yeah, the Griot mentioned Kevin Samuels, so that's one faction of mainstream media that did mention Kevin. But the bad news is they mentioned him in a negative light. And while I'm on that, I've heard some brothers and sisters on YouTube. I'm going to bruise some egos and hurt some feelings here among black people. Do you know a lot of you black people on YouTube, y'all think that world star hip hop is representative of mainstream media? No, it's not. No, it is not. I'm here to tell you, trust me on this. No, it is not. World star hip hop is basically like a gossip site. Like Bossip or Media Takeout. Those are gossip sites. Them ain't mainstream media, true, legitimate mainstream media sites. Man, and keeping it even more blunt, you want me to keep shit like extra real? World star hip hop, man, that's for like street nigga types. Just keeping shit real. That's for like ghetto street nigga types, man. Yeah, in other words, you don't hear no bougie type, highly educated bougie type black people talking about no world star hip hop. I rarely, if ever, hear bougie type black people talking about world star hip hop. And you know, I floated in a bougie crowd for years. They don't talk about no world star hip hop, man. So I've heard a number of people over the last year will categorize world star hip hop as a mainstream media web. No, it's not. No, it is not. No, it is not. World Star Hip Hop is not a mainstream media website. That's a black gossip site, basically. It's popular, but it's still not mainstream media. It has a lot of visitors per week and per month, but it's still not mainstream media. Still not mainstream media, man. So I just had to make that clear. But anyway, yeah, like Kevin, he's never been interviewed, unless I'm forgetting something. He's been interviewed by some popular podcast programs, but he hasn't been interviewed by a nationally syndicated broadcast radio show. He was mentioned on one, The Breakfast Club. Breakfast Club would be considered mainstream media. So yeah, Breakfast Club, and they did mention Kevin Samuels. So he was mentioned on at least one nationally syndicated broadcast radio show, which is, if nothing else, The Breakfast Club. That's considered mainstream media. I haven't seen him on no TV talk show. But anyway, my point is this. My biggest point is the criteria that contributes to someone being popular on YouTube or a similar platform is totally different. Here's the biggest difference without getting too lengthy. See, YouTube is conducive for people who have what's known as a cult following or a niche following. Some people say niche. I say niche. Some people say niche. N-I-C-H-E. What is a niche or niche following? That means a real specific demographic following. For example, if I was followed solely and specifically by single heterosexual men between the ages of 18 and 39, and no one else, that would mean I have a niche or niche following. Another term is also a cult following. That's what most YouTube content creators have. They don't have a broad appeal following. There might be a handful of people on YouTube who might, mainly people who are on YouTube that already established themselves in mainstream media, like Will Smith, of course, a box office star, movie star. He has a YouTube channel. The Rock has a YouTube channel. People who are already established in mainstream media have come to YouTube, and a lot of them have a very broad-based following because they already had mainstream notoriety. But most people say, like, within the manosphere, and more specifically the black manosphere, they don't have no mainstream following here on YouTube. They have a very specific demographic, man. They have a very specific demographic. Like, since I mentioned Alpha Male Strategy, Alpha Male Strategy has a very specific demographic that follows him. Alpha Male Strategy, and this is not to disparage the brother, but I'm just going to keep it real. 99% chance Alpha Male Strategy would never experience mainstream fame and notoriety. He's not polished enough. I'm just going to keep it real. He's not polished enough. He has a type of personality that would appeal to a specific niche demographic. But when you're talking about attracting a broad appeal, oh no, dude. In order to achieve mainstream, you got to have a broad appeal. Meaning that you can't just appeal to, say, like, if you're a black man, you can't just appeal to other black men. You got to be able to appeal to white men, Asian men, Hispanic men, Middle Eastern men. You got to be able to appeal to women to one degree or another. Women drive mainstream media. If you didn't know, I did a video. Remember, I did a video when there was a rumor that a black woman was going to take over the role of James Bond. And I did a video where I talked about how in simple terms, man, women drive mainstream media, man. In other words, putting it another way, if women don't like you, you ain't gonna never be no mainstream media superstar, ever. If some percentage of women ain't feeling, if a large percentage of women ain't feeling you, you ain't gonna never be no mainstream media superstar, ever. I guarantee you that. I put money on that. You ain't gonna never be no mainstream media. You can be a YouTube superstar without any women following you at all. It's possible to do that on YouTube. Yeah, you can have a large following on YouTube without having any female followers or supporters or subscribers at all. You can't do that in mainstream media. That is next to impossible to do that in mainstream media. Mainstream media, man, women have to, a certain percentage of women gotta like you and approve of you. Which is why a lot of you guys in the manosphere can't stand mainstream media, because they know deep down that it's women driven. Yeah, trust me, I used to pitch scripts to studio executives. I ain't just talking out my ass, dude. Again, this is an industry I used to work in. I know what I'm talking about. Women, to one degree or another, they drive most aspects of mainstream media. You can't make it in mainstream media without women approving of you. Man, you had AMS coming out saying a lot of these bitches toy with the emotions when he first rose to popularity. Man, once them clips are played, man, his career would be over before he got started. And going back to Kevin and Kwame, I'll start with Kwame. Kwame, man, I got a lot of love and respect for Kwame. Here's Kwame's plus and minus. It's almost a simultaneous plus and minus. Kwame's too real to ever be a mainstream media superstar. Remember, I did a video about this. Remember I was talking about Snoop Dogg? Go back in my archives. I did a video about Snoop Dogg where I talked about, basically I said, when you're popular within the ranks of mainstream media, you can only be real to a degree. You can only be real to a degree. You can't be what I call real. You can be real, but you can't be real. If I had to divide being real into 3 levels, real, and real, mainstream media, you can be real. I brought up in that video about the well-known HBO host, Bill Maher. I remember one time he had this show on ABC called Politically Incorrect. And he was bragging that he was the most real host on network television. And I remember Arsenio Hall clowned him and basically was like, man, yeah, you're real by network television standards. I'll give you that. You're real, but you ain't like real. He was like, because if you was real, they'd cancel your show off the air. And Bill Maher tried to, challenge that assertion. And sure enough, once he made a comment about 9/11 and alleged that U.S. was involved in 9/11, they took his ass off the air. You remember Snoop Dogg had to apologize after he went after Gayle King? He had to apologize. He had to go on an apology tour, man. You can only be real to I said that when I first got on YouTube. If y'all remember, I remember within the first 2 to 3 months after I first got on YouTube, I was saying that one of the things I like about YouTube is that you can be real. You can be real. You can't be real in mainstream media. Again, if I didn't divide keeping it real on 3 levels, real, and real, you can be real in mainstream media. You can be real on YouTube. But even on YouTube, 90% of the time, you can't be real. Like the highest level real. Like you can't come on YouTube with a Nazi swastika, or however you pronounce that, and just say, I hate all Jews and I want to kill them. You can't be that type of real. They'll snatch your channel in a microsecond. You can't be a white racist person and have a YouTube channel and say, I hate all niggers. You can't have no channel like that on YouTube. Google makes money. Google owns YouTube. Google is about making money. If you fuck with their money, they gonna snatch you off of this motherfucker, man. Believe that shit. So anytime you have to contribute to helping a company make money, you can't keep it 1,000% real. You can't. can't keep it 1,000% real. Real. Because they're going to snatch your channel. So a lot of people be on YouTube saying, oh man, I love YouTube because you can keep it all the way real. No, that's not true. You can keep it more real on YouTube than you could, say, on a network television show. So in that regard, you can keep it more real than the average mainstream media outlet. But you can't get on YouTube and say a bunch of hateful shit about the opposite gender or a particular race or ethnicity of people. Man, Google will snatch your shit in a microsecond. See if I'm lying. Try me and see if I'm lying. Y'all better get real. Speaking of real. So anyway, my whole point was this, man. It started with I said, I heard some people projecting that both Kevin Samuels and Kwame Brown had the potential to not only be YouTube superstars, which both of them pretty much already are, but they could take it to the next level and become mainstream media superstars. I say no with both of them, honestly. Kwame Brown too real, man. He too street real. Mainstream media, man, again, like a Snoop Dogg, they'll let you be real to a degree, man, of mainstream media, man. But if somebody was to offer him, say, a cable TV show that's centered around sports and just general talk, man, I give you a perfect example, man. I'm gonna give you a quick story. And you've heard me mention this one before. In the same way Kevin Samuels blew up in the last 12 to 15 months, back around 2006, 2007, there was this woman named Alexis K. Tyler, who was based in Atlanta, had this real popular public access channel show based in Atlanta that became this internet and social media sensation, at least among black folk. Everybody was talking about it. I don't know if anybody, you could comment in my conversation if you remember that. Around the latter half of 2006, first half 2007, almost everybody was talking about Alexis K. Tyler. Because she was the most, at the time, she was arguably the most sexually explicit black female on the internet. Like, when it came to talking about stuff to do with women's sexuality, she would keep shit like 200% real. Real. She was real. Remember them 3 levels? Real. She would keep things at minimum real. When it came to stuff to do with women's sexuality. One example would be, she used to call out other women, specifically other black women, who tried to present themselves in public as the wholesome good girl, what I would basically call like a wholesome pretender. She would call out a lot of wholesome pretender types. Women who tried to act like they didn't love dick as much as men love pussy. And she would basically be like, you bitches know you lying. Y'all bitches know you love dick just as much as men love pussy. You know you do. Some of y'all get hypnotized by dick. Y'all be dickmatized. And yeah, man. But anyway, without getting too long a story, man, she was getting that type of reaction at the time. Around 2007, 2008, a lot of people was telling her, oh, yeah, man, she going to be on cable TV. She probably going to get a show on HBO or Showtime or something, man. The internet is in love with Alexis K. Tyler. And I became cool with her. And I was one of the first ones to tell her, just like I'm telling y'all in this video. I was one of the first ones to tell her. I said, Alexis, because she was going to have an interview with some TV studio executives. And she was basically asking me for advice because she knew I worked in media and entertainment. I said, Alexis, I can tell you what's going to happen in that meeting. They're going to come at you. Her main brand was pussy power. Pussy power. I said, the first thing they're going to tell you, they're going to say, oh, you can't use that. That's too explicit, too crass. You need to tone it down to vagina power, which she did. Then they told her that she was going to have to be basically more polished and refined, translate less niggerish, in blunt terms, less niggerish. And just they gave a whole bunch of advice. Basically, they was telling her they was going to remake her image so that she could have a more broad appeal. See, for mainstream popularity, man, you got to have what's known as broad appeal, man. Like Will Smith has broad appeal. The Rock has broad appeal. They don't have niche or niche appeal. They have broad-based appeal, man. And sure enough, after she had that meeting, she ended up calling me, telling me I was on the mark. She said, damn, Alan, almost everything you predicted that they were going to say, they said. That's what they would do with Kwame, man. They wouldn't let Kwame go on no cable TV show. Like ESPN would never hire Kwame Brown. He's too real, man. He's too real. He keeps shit too extra real, man. Like, see, with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson, they market their show as a podcast that keeps shit real. They keep shit real. Maybe to a certain extent, real. But they don't keep shit real. Like Kwame. Kwame keeps shit real. The highest level of real. You ain't gonna make it in mainstream doing that. Same with Kevin Samuels, man. Kevin Samuels could possibly make it in mainstream media if he was similar to what I was just saying about Alexis. If he was to allow handlers to remake his image. But here's the real deal, though, man. Just like I told Alexis, I said, if you allow handlers to remake your image, you're going to lose your most loyal fans and followers because they're going to feel like you being fake. They're going to feel like you being phony. Same with Kevin, man. Kevin, man, in order to succeed in mainstream media, man, they would want to remake him in a manner that makes him play up to women. Because again, man, women drive most aspects of mainstream media. You can't piss off women and be successful in mainstream media. It's next to impossible. It's next to impossible. Go on IMDb and look up this movie called In the Company of Men. Have y'all ever seen that movie? Man, women hated that movie, man. And that's why I did poorly at the box office. Man, watch that movie when you got some free time. In the Company of Men. About Aaron Eckhart plays this dude who's just like a totally chauvinistic, sexist, borderline misogynistic asshole type dude, man, who exploits and manipulates this woman who's deaf. Man, I remember a lot of female celebrities when that movie came out, man. They spoke out against that shit. Man. Like, I told y'all before, man, I was surprised that Gone Girl. If Gone Girl had been written by a man, I don't think that movie would have been seen at the theaters. But it just so happened that a woman was who wrote the book version of that movie, and she wrote the screenplay. That's the only reason why Gone Girl, because Gone Girl, man, kept it too real about how manipulative and scandalous women are. You hear my son in the background, Caden. He making noise in the background. But yeah, man, you can man, that movie, man. In simple terms, that movie didn't do well at the box office because 99% of women hated that movie. They hated that movie. Again, man, I used to pitch scripts to Hollywood, man. And a lot of the other studio executives would have problems with a lot of my scripts because they said they would basically say one way or another, women ain't going to like this movie. Because I would highlight how sexually duplicitous women were, how manipulative they were. So anyway, all that to say, I just wanted to talk. I know it didn't have nothing to do with dating relationships, but I just wanted to give y'all a brief kind of media and entertainment business one-on-one crash course, man. For all you people saying, yeah, man, I know Kevin on his way to being a mainstream media superstar. I know Kwame Brown on his way to being a mainstream. I don't even think Kwame Brown wants to be a mainstream. By listening to some of his live streams and commentary, I don't even think that's one of his ambitions or aspirations is to be a mainstream media superstar. I would go as far as say he borderline hates mainstream media. He borderline hates mainstream media. And as far as Kevin, as is, I don't think he would become a mainstream media superstar. Now, if he was to do some kind of pivot and kind of reinvent himself for mainstream media and become more likable and more appealing to a large percentage of black women, he could possibly become, kind of be the second coming of Steve Harvey or maybe a touch above, Michael Baisden. Remember how Michael Baisden was kind of a medium tier mainstream celebrity back in the late 90s and most of the 2000s. He was what I would call a second tier mainstream media celebrity. A lot of black women was feeling him. So he could land somewhere in between Michael Baisden and Steve Harvey if he had the right managers, right agents, right handlers. But other than that, no, I don't see it. Anyway, I talked about that longer than I wanted to. Main thing I want to talk about, speaking of the movie In the Company of Men, somebody wrote a comment basically saying, Alan, I know you always point out two things. Number one, that one of the benefits of exhibiting mode 1 behavior with women is that it prevents women from exploiting you for your non-sexual time, attention, and companionship, and exploiting you for your financial resources and material possessions. And secondly, you say one of the things that motivates mode 2 behavior is when a man is afraid of being harshly criticized by women, insulted by women, and just having, being perceived as an asshole or a jerk and being perceived as basically unlikable or too controversial and too blunt and straightforward by women. He basically, and I'm paraphrasing his words, I can't remember, I don't have his coming in front of me, but he said, I want to add on a third factor to those two you already mentioned. The third factor is, based on guys I've hung around with, is that a lot of guys, they don't so much care about women trying to run game on them and manipulate them as much as they want to run game on women. They want to exploit and manipulate women. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of guys hate on Mode 1 is because Mode 1 prevents you from doing that. On the plus side, it prevents women from running game on you, but on the negative end, it prevents you from running game on women. And he said, that's why I believe a lot of men be hating on your Mode 1 approach. That's valid. That's valid. I've had guys tell me that. I remember years ago, I was at a reunion of some of my frat brothers. And that's what a couple of my frat brothers told me at this reunion I was at. I think this was in 2016. That's what two of my younger frat brothers told me. They was like, Alan, man, we admire and respect the fact that you now a well-known book author and dating coach. But they was like, man, I ain't really feeling Mode 1, man. I said, why is that? And one of the two noobs, he said, I'm going to just be blunt, man. I don't remember his exact words, so I'm paraphrasing to a degree, but he said, man, I like to run game on women, man. I like misleading and manipulating women, man. He said, I get off on that. He said, that's like an adrenaline rush for me, man. I like tricking women into having casual sex with me. And he said, what I basically like to do is meet a woman, connect with her in such a way that I basically make her fall in love with me, and then I fuck her maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 times, and then I just dump her ass. I said, man, that's cold, man. That's toying with a woman's emotions. And he said, yeah, I'm guilty as charged. But he said, I'm just being real with you, Noop. He said, I get off on that. He said, I literally do. And then this other Noop basically co-signed with him. He said, yeah, I'm the same way, man. I like to play with women, man. I wouldn't, he said, I wouldn't get nothing out of being Mode 1 with women, man. You can't fuck with women's heads, man, when you Mode 1, man. You just got to be straight up about what you want. He said, I wouldn't have no fun with that, man. I like to basically play with women, man. I said, in other words, you like to toy with women's emotions. He said, well, I don't want to necessarily put it like that, but if you go, for argument's sake, he said, yeah, man. I like to toy with women, especially women who I feel like are snooty types, women who come across like they better than me, like I'm not good enough for them. He said, I like to fuck with those uppity type bitches, man, who think they all that. He said, I like fucking with their egos and their emotions and getting that pussy and then just dumping their ass. He said, I get off on that shit. And then they gave each other like a pound. And even, I mentioned AMS earlier. If you remember, when AMS first start becoming popular. Again, I was talking about people reworking their image, reinventing themselves. He's kind of reinventing himself now, starting with fall of 2019. But before that, that's how basically how AMS was. He used to regularly tell his followers, he used to be like, hey man, fuck these women, man. I ain't trying to be honest with these bitches. I'm trying to fuck these hoes to sleep. He said if that means lying to them, misleading and manipulating them, toying with the emotions, he said, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. He said, all I'm trying to do is fuck these hoes to sleep, and I'm going to do it whatever method I choose to do it. And his followers were like, yeah, that's when he was what I like to call the sleazeball gang version of AMS. Then again, he dropped the whole sleazeball thing back around summer, early fall of 2019. He dropped that, starting with his second dating advice. But if you notice, his second dating advice, but he tried to totally I think it was because he probably had some handlers that was trying to get him to become more popular on a mainstream level. But initially, he was all about the sleazeball gang mentality. That's what a sleazeball is. A sleazeball is a guy who encourages and condones lying to people, misleading and manipulating people, exploiting people, toying with women's emotions and shit. That's what a sleazeball is. And that used to be his brand. He used to sell t-shirts that said the sleazeball gang. But yeah, it's true, man. A lot of men, there are a percentage of men that, like this guy who commented in my comment section said, that that's one of the reasons why a percentage of guys ain't feeling Mode 1. Because again, the plus of Mode 1 is that it prevents women from exploiting and manipulating you. But the downside of Mode 1 is that it prevents you from running game on women. A lot of guys want to run game on women, man. They want to run game on women. In other words, what I mean by running game, in more specific terms, the most prime example of running game on a woman is essentially to meet a woman, give that woman the disingenuous and misleading impression that you want to be her next long-term boyfriend or even possibly her future husband as a means of motivating her to give you the pussy. And then once you fuck a woman 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, whatever, you just, without warning, unceremoniously dump her. You know who actually promoted that in his book? And we got into it about it? Was the great Robert Greene. If people who follow me on Blog Talk Radio remember, man, one of my most interesting and what I want to say, I was leaning towards saying controversial. I'm trying to think of another word. I interviewed Robert Greene, author of the 48 Laws of Power and other notable art of seduction, on my Blog Talk Radio show. Man, I ain't gonna go into all the details. Let's just say that show ended up being a trip. Because basically in the show, I went after Robert Greene. And see, nobody had ever really done that with him. Most people who had interviewed Robert Greene basically like fawned all over him and basically just, showered him with love, kudos, and respect. I didn't do that. I wasn't disrespectful towards him, but I challenged him. The biggest thing I challenged Robert Greene on, I said, dude, it started with, I just asked him a question. I said, so you're encouraging men and condoning men being highly manipulative with people, and particularly other women. And he said, no, I don't encourage that or condone that. And I said, okay, if you don't, why did you write this fucking book then? And he said, well, I just wrote this book to show men and women that there are people in the world that are highly manipulative. But I don't necessarily myself encourage manipulative behavior or condone it. And I was basically like, nigga, please. Why would you write a book that for the most part centers all about manipulation? This book is a second coming of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. And you saying it, you can see at least Machiavelli owned up to the fact that he wanted people to be manipulative. But you saying that you just trying to expose manipulative people? I'm basically like, that's some bullshit, man. So I challenged Robert Greene. Dude, I talked about this at least one, if not two previous videos before. Man, after that video, man, of all the interviews, I was on Blog Talk Radio for 9 years. I did 9 years worth of interviews. I never got as much hateful emails by my guests, followers, and supporters as I did after that interview with Robert Greene. Man, I had like his white followers, they wrote me, calling me the N-word. They was like, yeah, they was, I mean, some of the emails almost bordered on death threats. I wouldn't say they was full-fledged death threats, but they bordered on like death threats. They was basically like, man, who are you, Alan Roger Currie, to challenge Robert Greene on anything? We don't know who the fuck you are. You better watch yourself talking to Robert Greene like that, with that disrespectful tone. We'll find you, Alan Roger Currie. We'll find you. Shoot, Robert Greene is a god. But yeah, one of his 48 laws of power involves just intentionally breaking the hearts of women. I can't remember specifically which law it was. But yeah, one of his laws involves intentionally and mercilessly breaking the hearts of women. He says that's how you will own a woman's soul, is by just, he basically says, recommends, I'm paraphrasing this chapter is, but he basically says, meet a woman, get into a relationship with her, make her think that you're in love with her. And once she's at her highest point of being in love with you, just say, hey, bitch, I don't love you no more. I got to go. And he says that woman would be so brokenhearted, she'll never stop thinking about you for the rest of your life. And I was basically like, Robbie, that's some cold shit, man. That's some cold-hearted shit. I said, why would you even feature that in the book? And he was like, well, I don't encourage or condone that tactic, but I'm just saying that there's men out there who do that. And I was basically like, man, come on. So, yeah, so that's why a lot of guys, man, they don't, that's why they favor not only mode 2, but I would say just as much, if not more, some variations of mode 3. Because that's what really more so falls under mode 3. When you're blatantly dishonest and blatantly disingenuous and misleading and manipulative with women, that actually falls more under mode 3 than mode 2. Mode 2 is more when you're vague and ambiguous. A combination of polite, cautious, and vague and ambiguous. Now, mode 2 is still, to at least a minor degree, manipulative in its own right, but it's not nearly as bad as mode 3 is. Mode 3 is when you're just, again, a blatantly dishonest, disingenuous, misleading, and manipulative type dude with women. That's mode 3. But anyway, yeah, a lot of guys, man, love running game on women, man. They do. Like I said, 2 of my own frat brothers admitted that. And, I always say, hey, man, your guy's a grown-ass man. Here's what I always say, man. If you man enough to run game on women, you got to be man enough to take all the consequences and repercussions that come along with it, including death. Again, I told you about that friend of my cousin's, man. He got shot in the head by a woman for just toying with a woman's emotions. So if you're man enough to run game on women, you got to be man enough. If that means you're going to get your car vandalized, your tires slashed, you got to be man enough to take that shit. You got to be man enough to take that shit. And we living in the Me Too era too? Good luck. All I got to say, man, good luck. A lot of women use the Me Too movement to get back at guys who toy with their emotions. Real talk. Real talk. A lot of women have used the Me Too movement era as a vehicle for getting revenge on men who toy with their emotions. You ready for that? If you are, good luck. Have a safe and enjoyable Memorial Day holiday if you live in the United States. 98% chance I won't be back with another video until next month, June, but you know me. You know me.
Yes, sir. Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, you're the fucking king. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
I bet the king would fuck me really good.
Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.
I have to agree with you on the communication piece, because I actually did take a session with Alan Roger Currie, and he gave me a line that I did not think was going to work, and it worked. And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh my God!
Man, he's the master. He's the master of the verbal seduction. He got that communication piece down pat.
It really worked. It just simply worked, and I just didn't think it was going to work at all.
Some guys have natural handles. Some guys have a better natural shot, but you can always improve your shot. And sex is damn sure something you can fucking learn. Look, dude, you want to learn how to talk better? I'm hiring Alan Roger Currie to get my dirty talk game on, because it's always been something I want to get better at.
Verbal seduction, man. I'm like, clearly, this guy's the Michael Jordan of seduction. Like, you know, come on now.